All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, after suffering through a 3-14 season, there's only one way for the New York Football Giants to go, and that is up. Giants co-owner John Mara has entered this offseason and he put the onus on general manager Joe Schoen and head coach Brian Daboll to get things fixed, or else this offseason New York struggles at quarterback in recent years. As you just look at last season alone, Giant quarterbacks only accounted for 15 passing touchdowns. Okay. And overall, Big Blue was 28th in the NFL in passing last season. So, what have we seen from the Giants so far this offseason? They signed a pair of veteran quarterbacks and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. As the Giants quarterback room now consists of these two newbies to the team, along with Tommy DeVito. But Mara still wants the Giants to find the next franchise quarterback in this draft. But will Shane and Dayball be able to make it happen? Of course, we all know that the Giants are slated to pick third overall later this month at the draft. More than likely, they are going to miss out on the University of Miami's quarterback, Cam Ward, who is expected to go first overall to the Tennessee Titans. So, of course, one big question is going to be, what is Cleveland going to do with the second overall pick? That is going to be the $1 million question. We've heard stories previously about the possibility of Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback out of Colorado, going that high. Maybe not. Okay. Do the Browns like a Travis Hunter? Do they like an Abdul Carter there? We got to wait and see. And then from there, we'll definitely get more of a fix as to what the Giants intend to do third overall. Now, many experts do feel that the third pick is too high for the Giants to take a quarterback like a Shedeur Sanders. And with that said, are the Giants all but guaranteed to take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter there? Before I answer that question, I'll say this. Travis Hunter, phenomenal talent. We know what he did both as a DB and a wide receiver the past couple of years at Colorado. On top of that, we know what Abdul Carter can bring as an edge rusher. Okay, we saw him at Penn State in the Big Ten. Now, several years ago, former Giants general manager Dave Gettleman missed an opportunity early on in the draft to either take wide receiver Devonta Smith or edge rusher Micah Parsons. And of course, that has come back to haunt the Giants franchise. As Smith is tearing it up with the Philadelphia Eagles and Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, if you're the Giants, you got to see these guys twice a year. So the question is, would the Giants do this again? The thing is, you look at this Giants defense and you ask yourself, would another edge rusher from Penn State be just what the doctor ordered? I know you've got Kayvon Thibodeau, you've got Brian Burns, okay, who you traded from and got from Carolina last year, and you paid a lot of money to in the process. And of course, the Giants used a top 10 pick on Kayvon Thibodeau several years ago. But let's say the Giants do take Abdul Carter. You can't have too much of a good thing as far as when it comes to edge rushers, especially in this division, because if you're the Giants, you have to find a way to slow down Jaden Daniels in Washington, Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, and Dak Prescott in Dallas. And just reminiscing for some Giants fans, you think about those last two Super Bowls that New York won in 2007 and 2011. They were predicated defensively by their pass rush. And you think about it, uh, both former defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo and Perry Fuel both had systems where, you know what, they would throw three or four defensive ends on the field at the same time and just basically line them up at defensive tackle or outside linebacker and just have as many pass rushers on the field as possible to go out there and put the pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And of course, it worked. That's a possibility for the Giants right there. You think about the athletic prowess of a Travis Hunter. it would to be too much, in my opinion, for the Giants to pass up. I mean, just the thought of having both him and Neighbors at wide receiver. I know that Travis Hunter wants to play both sides of the ball. I think he has a better career in the NFL as a wide receiver, in my opinion. But with that said, I truly do believe whatever team that he goes to, Giants or not, they're going to be smart enough to definitely find some packages for him as far as playing DB and also on kickoff returns and punt returns. Now, with that said, typically early on, it's all about taking the best player available, which is true. I'm also of the category that says, hey, if you're picking that high in the NFL draft, it's not just about the best player, it's about the biggest need. And of course, if you are the Giants, you have plenty of needs to fill in this draft. You signed Russell Wilson, you signed Jameis Winston. Okay, at this point of Russell Wilson's career, he's a stopgap guy. Jameis Winston is a backup. Okay. So if you're the Giants, you still have to go out there and find your guy. Now, many people are saying a Shedeur Sanders is too high there. Some people are saying a Jaxson Dart is definitely too high there, but there are some people who are still high on Jaxson Dart to possibly be a first round pick in this year's draft. Now, it's going to be very interesting because I truly do expect the Giants to pass on taking a quarterback first in the first round, at least at pick number 3. And the reason why I say that, I don't see them trying to force it. That is the biggest thing for me right there. David talks Broncos plus NFL draft. Oh, listen, definitely appreciate the support. Definitely appreciate chiming in, my man. Definitely, if you like what you're hearing, listen, please feel free to like it and subscribe to it. And also, you know what? Um, we can definitely link up after this and possibly talk some talk, ahead of the NFL draft. Not just about the Giants, but definitely about the Broncos. Definitely holler at me. Definitely appreciate the support, man. But also, you look at it, if you're the Giants, you definitely don't want to, force a pick here. And I think at least from what they're showing in their cards right now, I don't think they're going to force the pick. With that said, the Giants still could come back at some, and they will come back at some point and definitely get themselves a quarterback. Why? Because you look at it, and people are talking about a Shedeur Sanders slipping in the draft. I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the Giants, and I'm looking at the teams that are picking after the Giants. There's not a lot of teams that are looking for a quarterback right now. What could be very interesting here, okay? I'm looking at this draft board as of right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers at number 21. Of course, we know about the Aaron Rodgers saga that's going on there right now. Would they want to bring in a Shedeur Sanders or a Jaxson Dart and, maybe to say, what, screw the whole Aaron Rodgers thing? I'm not sure. I know on the surface right now, they're saying that, hey, we'll be okay with a Mason Rudolph going into the 2025 season. I'll tell you like this: if you put Mason Rudolph in as a starting quarterback for the Steelers all season long in 2025, for the first time in a long time, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be competing to be in the basement of the AFC North. And last place and the Pittsburgh Steelers are something that you really don't really fathom there. But nonetheless, Pittsburgh is a team to watch right there. Now, here's where it could get tricky. All right. Because you're looking at the beginning of round 2. You've got Cleveland, you've got the Giants, and then you've got the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, we all know we expect Tennessee to take Cam Ward first overall. All right, so Tennessee's out of the quarterback question. Now, if you're the Giants per se, and you see somebody that's there, a Shedeur Sanders, a Jaxson Dart per se, do you try to jump in front of Cleveland to make it happen? And at that point, I think the Giants would. Now, here's where it could get interesting because the team that picks directly in front of Cleveland is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They pick last in round number 1, and the Eagles and the Giants really ain't kissing cousins, when it comes both on the field and off the field. Bitter rivals, okay? So would the Giants try to make a move there? Or if Philly's not open to business, would they go to Kansas City at 31 and say, hey, let's talk turkey? Or would they go to Buffalo at number 30 and let's say, hey, let's talk turkey? Because again, if you're Joe Shane, once upon a time, Shane was the assistant GM for the Buffalo Bills. Still has a lot of people that like him in the building. Washington at 29, definitely. I don't think they're going to talk do business with the Giants. So it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive that Joe Shane and company are going to be about this. You're saying you really hope Travis Hunter is a Giant. Well, I'll tell you like this. I think he could definitely have an impact for New York. It's one of those where I think the Giants are in a pretty good position because I think it's either going to be Abdul Carter or it's going to be Travis Hunter, whomever Cleveland does not take at pick number 2. All right. And I think Cleveland might be in the mix to get themselves a quarterback as well. I look at it. Yeah, they brought in Kenny Pickett, but at the end of the day, Kenny Pickett is a backup. And even if Deshaun Watson is healthy, and I mean, the odds are against him as far as coming back healthy for this season after having two Achilles injuries now, two Achilles surgeries. Even when healthy, Deshaun Watson has been a shell of himself, to say the least. Um, since he got traded from the Texans to the Browns. And of course, if you're Kevin Stefanski, you cannot wait around on this. You know what I'm saying? But you're saying it would be awesome to see the Giants get back into the first to grab Shedeur and keep him and Travis together. For the sake of argument, that would be a very interesting offense as we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and of course Malik Neighbors. And of course, just for the sake of argument, we all know that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders have plenty of chemistry as it is. I'll tell you like this though. I think if you're the Giants, you definitely don't want to force it early on. I totally get that. But you still got to be a little bit aggressive. And the reason why I say it is this: if you're Joe Shane and you're Brian Daboll and you screw this up, you're not going to have an opportunity to go ahead and make this pick in 2026. In all honesty, the year for the Giants to get their quarterback was last year. We saw 6 quarterbacks go in round number 1. The 3 quarterbacks that could go early on in this draft. You've got Cam Ward, you've got Shedeur Sanders, you've got Jaxson Dart. There's questions about them. And of course, the other quarterbacks after them, there's a lot of questions. I mean, the gap between Ward, Sanders, and Dart and everybody else is huge heading into this draft. So it's one of those where it's not the year that you want a quarterback, and I think this is why the Giants already went out there and got Winston and Russell Wilson in free agency. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to get one. It's just a matter of not forcing it. Now, I'm not going to be one who's going to sit up here and say, well, Shedeur Sanders does not have an NFL future as a starting quarterback. Okay, a lot of these guys on TV that make these picks and do the mock drafts, this, that, and the third, they're wrong more often than they're right, but they're still on television. I'm not there to knock them for that. It is what it is. But with that said, you've got to use your own eyes, okay, and see if somebody has potential at the next level. I do think Shedeur Sanders has potential to be a quality starting quarterback in the NFL if he is put in the right situation. And that's the thing. The Giants still have issues on their offensive line. They still have issues when it comes to running the football, but they have been so bad for so many years at the quarterback position. If there was ever a team right now in the National Football League that is quarterback hungry, that is quarterback desperate, it's the New York Giants. Not just because they've been so bad at the position, also due to the fact that they have to try to find a way to somewhat keep up with the Joneses in that division. So that's the situation that they find themselves in right now. The kid, what's going on? What up? You saying just checking in? Hope the Giants get Shedeur or Cam Ward. Cam Ward, I think, is a long shot at this point. I think he's going to the Titans first overall. Brian Callahan is going into year number two as a Titans head coach. He came in, looking to fix Will Levis at quarterback, but honestly, I saw Will Levis play quarterback in college, and he was not good. And this was a kid that, couldn't beat out Sean Clifford to be the starting quarterback at Penn State, and he went to Kentucky. And Sean Clifford was a six-round pick in the NFL draft last year. So if you couldn't beat out a six-round pick, how are you going to be a first-round pick? Of course, he slipped around number two, but nonetheless, Will Levis just doesn't have it. And if you were Brian Callahan, you cannot wait around for that. It's a win now scenario. So, thus, with all of that being said, I think Cam Ward will be a Tennessee Titan by the end of this month. You're saying, David, you're saying I think Shedeur has the mental makeup to handle the New York media and craziness as well. Unsure about Dart with that. Yeah, I think Jaxson Dart started off at USC, if my memory doesn't fail me. Transferred to Ole Miss and linked up with a former USC head coach down there, Lane Kiffin. And I think, Jackson Dart did some good things, but to your point, it comes down to mentality. All right. And New York is not, it's not an environment for every pro athlete. Okay. I know that some people right now might not say that Eli Manning, for an example, the former Giants quarterback, is a pro football Hall of Famer. Some people will disagree with that. Okay. But nonetheless, he went to New York and he had the perfect temperament to deal with New York because he never got too high, he never got too low, never really let what the fans and media said to him affect him. And it's one of those places where the media, they'll get on you there. Okay. And it's the same thing with the fans. There are certain sports towns that are tougher on their sports, on their professional athletes, not in any exact order, but Boston, Philadelphia, New York City, Chicago, places like that, they are very tough on their pro athletes, and you have to have the temperament for it. I think in the case of Shador, being coached by his dad, Dion, and Dion was a guy who people forget. Dion briefly played in New York, not in the NFL, but in Major League Baseball. He did play briefly with the New York Yankees, and then like all of that aside, Deion Sanders was a guy and still is a guy that has never met a camera that he didn't like. And of course, some people, would call Dion flashy, arrogant, cocky, whatever. But you know what? He knew how to back it up. And I think for Shador, is he his dad? No, clearly he's still a good football player. They're playing different positions, but Shador can spin that thing if you give him time. And that's why I think, possibly reuniting him with the Travis Hunter would work because they have that chemistry. And with a guy like Malik Neighbors, who did have a solid rookie season, 15 games, had 109 receptions, more than 1,200 yards, 17 touchdowns. I'll be one to argue this about Neighbors. We really don't know what Malik Neighbors can be just due to all of the offensive struggles at quarterback that the Giants had last season. And this is why I questioned the Giants taking Malik Neighbors then. Not because he's not talented, but the first thing I said was, okay, nice pick, but who's throwing him the football? And of course, we saw the struggles with the Giants quarterbacks last season. So now at least you can give him some quarterbacks who are going to throw him the football because I don't think because I do expect the Giants to take their quarterback in this draft. I do think more than likely, depending on where they take that quarterback, Russell Wilson might be the starting quarterback to begin this year, which is fine for the Giants. But nonetheless, whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Jameis Winston, or whether it's a quarterback that the Giants do draft later this month, you got somebody who can get Malik Neighbors the football. And if you have Malik Neighbors on one side, if you have Travis Hunter on the other side, potentially we're talking about some explosiveness in the passing game for the Giants that they have not had in quite some time, and then some might say ever. Okay, you're saying you're a bit biased because I'm a CU grad. Go Buffs, first and foremost. But I've been a big fan of how Shador has handled all the misleading articles and hate going into the 23 and 24 seasons? Well, I'll tell you like this. He balled out last year. He had himself a good season. Okay. It did not end well for Colorado, in that bowl game. And I will say this, they did make strides, okay, from 2023 to 2024. Made a lot of improvement. I think in the case of Shedeur, what really helped him and what really helped that program is all of the NFL coaches that Deion Sanders brought in. And you think about it, he brought in former Giants head coach Pat Shermer to be the offensive coordinator for Colorado last season. And I think that helped Shador with his pocket presence, with his ability to read opposing defenses. Did have some bad throws at times. Okay. I'm not going to sit up here and say he was John Elway back in the pocket. Absolutely not. But you did see the improvement in his game. And again, Pat Shermer, spoke glowingly of him and what he could potentially do in the NFL. And the thing is, Pat Shermer's been around the block in the National Football League, so he knows offense and he knows when a guy has it and when he does not have it. So I think the potential is there for Shedeur Sanders, especially if he's in the right position. Now, if you're telling me that the Giants take him late in round one or early in round two. And like I said, they have a Travis Hunter in place. You have a Malik Neighbors already there. That could be something in the passing game for New York. Still got to work on their offensive line as well. The kid, you're saying we didn't see his true potential because he had Daniel Jones as quarterback. Listen, absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. And that's exactly what I said when the Giants drafted him last year. Great talent, but who's getting him the football? It doesn't make sense to go out there and get a quality wide receiver if you ain't got nobody to throw him the football. So that's going to be a big thing for the Giants right there. Now, in the case of a Jaxson Dart, could he be a fallback for the Giants? Possibly, but I think the biggest thing with Jaxson Dart and watching him play, I feel like he's a guy that if his first read is not there, he's not as comfortable. And I think the Giants just got off of a quarterback in Daniel Jones, who's the same way. And if you're New York, you really can't afford to go down that road one more time. So, with that said, are the Giants a quarterback away from being playoff contenders? Possibly. Okay. And here's why. You look at Washington last year, and I know they brought in a new coaching staff, this, that, and the third, but a lot of holdovers on that team from the Ron Rivera era. And you come in and you had such an exciting player like Jaden Daniels. And we saw where this team could go as they got to the NFC Championship game, and they simply just ran out of gas against the Philadelphia Eagles team, which was better than them. I think the right quarterback for the Giants would give them hope for the first time in a very long time. I know that the Giants did get to this playoffs a couple of years ago with Daniel Jones as their quarterback, but they didn't get there because of the playmaking ability of Daniel Jones. They got there because they were a throwback team to the Bill Parcells era. They played good defense and they relied on their running game with former Giants running back Saquon Barkley to set up Daniel Jones on play action. That's how they got it done. Okay. This time around, they need a quarterback that can go out there and make plays. The kid you're asking, do I think Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston was a good decision to bring them in? I'll tell you like this. They were probably the best options available. And I know that Russell Wilson is not the Russell Wilson right now that we saw with the Seattle Seahawks. I will totally, say that. But if I'm the Giants, I would rather have Russell Wilson than Aaron Rodgers because you look at what's going on with Aaron Rodgers right now, and I know Aaron Rodgers was linked possibly to the Giants. They were like interested in him. He still hasn't signed. And the Steelers need a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is going to go out there and probably hold them hostage, to find a spot, even though they're really the only place that he can go. I know the Vikings, people are talking about him going being like Brett Favre. 2.0 and going to the Minnesota Vikings. The Giants did not need that headache. And we just saw the New York Jets get off of Aaron Rodgers and go in a totally different direction with a new coach and a new general manager. And the Jets basically told them, hey, we can go 5-12 without you. And the Jets can't. Okay. So I think Russell Wilson was the best option for the Giants there. And if the Giants do take a quarterback early on at some point in the draft, which I do expect them to do, you know, is Russell Wilson maybe the greatest mentor out there? No, but at least he could sit down and talk to the youngster about the ins and outs of the game. And the same thing for Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. And it's unfortunate because he came into the NFL with a litany of talent, when he came out of Florida State. But I think, that 30 touchdown, 30 interception season with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then he went to New Orleans, and it looked like he could have potentially become the heir apparent to a Drew Brees there, and it just didn't work out. So, Jameis, I think at this point is just a career backup because you can't really trust Jameis to go out there and play too much because, yeah, he can throw for 350 yards in a game, but better believe he's going to have three touchdowns, and he's also probably going to have two or three interceptions, and two of those interceptions are going to be pick sixes. The Giants are not a team that's equipped to come back from their quarterback throwing pick sixes like that, plain and simple. So I think that Russell Wilson was probably the best option for them. And I'll tell you like this, the Giants are probably going to take a quarterback early on at some point in this draft. Probably, maybe if they don't do it Thursday night, definitely Friday night of the draft. Okay, Russell Wilson is at the very least is going to make that young man compete because whoever comes in, yes, eventually they'll be the starting quarterback, but guess what? They got to go out there and earn it, which means they've got to have to go out there and outstudy and outplay and outwork Russell Wilson. And at this point, the veteran wants to go out there and prove to the NFL that, hey, I can still get it done. So it's not going to be just a snap of the finger and say, hey, a potential rookie is going to beat him out. So I think open competition for the Giants would definitely, help them with that. You're saying Aaron Rodgers is toxic, absolutely. And just switching gears real quick. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, this is probably going to be it for Mike Tomlin as a Steelers head coach because you're talking about a offensive room with Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and George Pickens at your at wide receiver. All I can say is cue the Benny Hill music at this point. That's all you can do. You're saying I think Jameis Winston can bring positive energy to the locker room. Well, to quote, to go from, sport to go to sports entertainment, it's going to be one of those things where Jameis Winston is probably going to be the most electrifying man in the Giants locker room at the very least. He's not an NFL starting quarterback at this point. Too many turnovers, too careless in the pocket, and that's something that Brian Daboll cannot afford to have here in 2025. You're saying Jameis will definitely be more liked in the locker room than Russ. The dynamics will be fun to watch. Yeah, if you want to talk about two guys, coming from opposite ends of the spectrum, they could be the NFL's version of Oscar Madison and Felix Unger for anybody who out there who's old enough to remember the Odd Couple. That's how that could be right there. But nonetheless, the Giants, it's a weak quarterback class, and they have to go out there and try to find a franchise quarterback in this draft. And they have to find a legit quarterback. It can't be somebody from Southwest Belt Parkway Community College. Okay, you got to that nobody's ever heard of. You've got to go out there and you got to find a legit person that you feel, what, on Sunday afternoons, this guy's going to give me a chance to win games. Something else to look at, the Joe Milton factor with the New England Patriots. I know the Patriots at first were saying, you know what, they're going to keep it close to the chest and look to keep Joe Milton. But at the end of the day, Drake May is their guy. And I know that the Patriots are asking for a third round pick for Milton. Maybe that asking price comes down a little bit because we saw Milton get taken, I think it was either the sixth round or the seventh round last year by the Patriots. And of course, everybody knows what's going on in New England. The future is Drake May, and now it's all about the Patriots building around him. And the thing is, if you're New England, you've got an asset there that other people want. And Joe Milton, in his one game last year for the Patriots, showed some talent. Okay. And there's probably going to be a team out there that's quarterback needy. And I think the Patriots are throwing that third round tag out there because they're trying to see if somebody does bite. Could be an option for the Giants, but I don't see them giving up a third round pick. Just throwing it out there. You're saying McCord's arm, and I know you're talking about Kyle McCord. Talent is nice, but his lack of mobility will probably limit him. He played better last year for Syracuse than he did at Ohio State. And I'll say this: you look at the talent that he had to throw the football to, at Ohio State, the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr. And Kyle McCord just simply at times seem like a deer in the headlights. Now, I will say this because historically, the Ohio State quarterbacks in the last 10 or 15 years or so, when they first come in, they're not good. And then year two or so is when they begin to pick it up. We saw it with CJ Stroud, the late Dwayne Haskins, and several other guys, okay, that held that position down. So he went to Syracuse. There wasn't as much pressure on him at Syracuse that it was at Ohio State because when you're at Ohio State, you are in the pressure cooker because it's not just about winning the Big Ten. It's about winning the Big Ten. It's about beating Michigan. It's about winning the national championship. Okay. And at Ohio State, if you lose and you lose because of the quarterback, you are going to hear it, unfortunately. No pressure last year at Syracuse did help them to that upset of Cam Ward in Miami last year. It also helped that Kyle McCord played his home games last year at Syracuse indoors. I'm not sure though if I'm the Giants, if I want that, because again, I see Kyle McCord and I see a career backup. Just my opinion there. The kid, you're saying I heard a rumor they might try to get Arch Manning. Eli Manning already made a deal with John Mara, but that's just a rumor. I'll tell you like this, because there's a lot of people that are talking about Arch Manning, coming out next year for the draft. That's if he wants to. Why? Because last year as Texas's backup, okay, to Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning made a boatload of money through the NILs. Arch Manning comes from money to begin with. So it's not like he really has to go out there and, test the waters of the NFL draft. I'll say this, though. We got to see what type of season Arch Manning has this time, as he's going to be the full time starting quarterback for Texas. On top of that, I think he can really sit back and see the playing field, if you will, to see, okay, who's picking in the top five next year, and do I want to play for them? So it's not a full guarantee uh that Arch Manning's going to be there. And I'll say this: if the Giants are in the running, okay, and this is beginning of April, so 7 8 months now from now, if we're talking about the Giants possibly drafting Arch Manning for 2026, I guarantee you Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will not be around to make that pick. You're saying, now that you bring up the dome stuff, Shedeur is probably better off in the dome too. That's the other thing, because a lot of teams, unfortunately, are shifting to the domes in the NFL. It's not for a playing aspect, it's for a money aspect, as far as how much money can we generate revenue wise from having events here year round. With that said, quarterbacks, and this is again, when it comes down to playing for the Giants, historically, they don't go for those quote unquote sexy picks at quarterback because you got to have that right temperament to play in the New York area. That's number one. Number two, you've got to have a very strong arm to deal with those wins at the Meadowlands come November, December, and January. The wins in Jersey they're very tough on athletes, whether it's kickers or quarterbacks. Okay, so you've got to have the arm that will deal with that. He played in cold weather in Boulder. Okay, of course, it's that thin, rocky mountain air, in that region. But nonetheless, Shedeur showed that he could get it done, and I guarantee you that that's something that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll have watched because whether they pick Shedeur or not, I guarantee you that the Giants have done their homework on this young man. I'll tell you like this, like I said before, will this be the last draft for Shane and Dayball? It definitely will if they do not find their starting quarterback and this team stinks again. But you look at the Giants, they've got a lot of questions that have to be answered in uh, in this draft. You're saying, what do I think about Milroe's fit with the Giants? I know that people, have been talking Jalen Milroe. They saw him at his pro day. They saw him at the combine. Some people are giving him a second or third round grade at quarterback. I'll say this: Jalen Milroe, I think, is a phenomenal athlete. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I watched him throw the football, at Alabama. And, some people at first wanted to say, well, maybe it was Nick Saban's offense. We saw him last year in Kalen DeBoer's offense for Alabama. And of course, Kalen DeBoer has a more open and more passing offense. We saw Michael Penix have success in that same offense at Washington. Nonetheless, I wasn't a fan of how Jalen Milroe threw the ball. He threw a lot of helium balls, in my opinion, a lot of 50-50 balls. And it's one of those where, to me, he was very inaccurate at times with the football. And that's something that the Giants can ill afford to go through again. I guarantee you, if the Giants turn around and pick Jalen Milroe at some point in this draft and expect him to be their future at franchise quarterback, like I said, this will be the last draft that Joe Shane and Brian Dayball are doing for this team. But nonetheless, like I said, the Giants do have other needs in this draft. Of course, we talked about quarterback, possibly offensive guard. I mean, you got Evan Neal at right tackle. Do they want to keep Evan Neal there, or would they like to move him to guard? We've got to wait and see because, of course, they got to get and keep Andrew Thomas healthy at left tackle because when Thomas is there, the tenor of things for the Giants' offensive line is totally different. Defensive line, you've got Dexter Lawrence as the anchor on that defensive line. And of course, Dexter Lawrence really began to come into his own, under uh, former Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. And of course, it's funny because now we got Wink Martindale at Michigan. And of course, granted, he inherited some of those guys, but then you look at a Mason Graham on that defensive line for Michigan and what he was able to do. You also look at a Kenneth Grant, two guys that are probably going to be taken very early on in this draft. If you're the Giants, you want to beef up that D line and with a guy like a Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant and go out there and say, hey, you know what? Let's put even more pressure and let's have more, run stoppers, up front. That's something to be seen. Tight end could be a need for the Giants, but I don't see them taking a tight end early on in this draft. I mean, I know people are high on Colston Loveland. I think, in my opinion, I think Tyler Warren is the best tight end in this draft. But the problem is these guys that I just mentioned, they're probably going to be gone in round one. And if you're the Giants, unfortunately, it's not a video game. You don't have so many picks that you can go out there and get all of these guys. Now there are some good tight ends that are available in this draft. I like Mason Taylor as well out of LSU. I also like Gunnar Helm out of the University of Texas. Also, Aronde Gadsden, a guy that Kyle McCord was throwing the football to last year at Syracuse. And of course, if that name sounds familiar, his dad, Aronde Gadsden Sr., did have success for several years as a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins under head coach Jimmy Johnson while he was on the receiving end of passes from Dan Marino. But nonetheless, Just throwing it out there. Let's just say the Giants got to trade back into round one late to get one of these quarterbacks. How much are they going to have to give up? That's another question. How many picks would they have to give up for this year as well as next year? I will say this though. If the Giants went from 34 to 32 or 31, it wouldn't have to be as much as you would think because there's three picks. I know it's two different rounds, but it's only like two, maybe three or four picks, depending on where they go. So that's going to be another big question as far as what they're going to be able to do in those middle rounds. The kid you're saying, Darren Waller seemed like like a good pick at the time, but what a disappointment! Huge disappointment. Didn't work out. I think Darren Waller was a victim of the culture of playing for another bad organization in the Giants, like just like he did for so many years with the Raiders, and then as well as not having the quarterback. The Giants basically put all of the pieces around Daniel Jones and gave him every reason not to fail as a starting NFL quarterback. And unfortunately for Daniel Jones, he did fail. And no, I'm not of that belief to say, hey, Daniel Jones is going to go out there with the Colts and turn into a Hall of Famer. Absolutely not, because that Colt quarterback situation, that's another one that is going to be a recipe for disaster. I've talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Just my 2 cents. Now, I know that some people out there have some questions about the Giants secondary and what upgrades they need. They took Deontay Banks a couple of years ago early on, hasn't worked out as much as the Giants would have liked. You got Cordell Flott, you got Dane Belton back there. I think if the Giants can address their front seven early on, adding another defensive lineman to go aside Dexter Lawrence, adding another edge rusher like an Abdul Carter, that's going to help out that secondary because if they can, hurry up that quarterback by a half second or even a second to get that ball out, it's going to put them in a better position to go out there and make plays. Also, I think for the Giants as a whole, they have you have to be optimistic defensively just to say, hey, this is year two under Shane Bowen's scheme, the former Tennessee Titans coordinator. So let's see what adjustments that both coordinator and team will make to one another for 2025. You're saying you like Bellinger coming into the draft, but he seems like a struggle to stay healthy. Well, the Giants do have some people at tight end, like Daniel Bellinger. But again, I put him in that category of, hey, we don't know what he can fully do because the Giants have had so many issues at the quarterback position. And I'll tell you another guy, if the Giants can get their quarterback position somewhat fixed to keep an eye on, and that's Jalen Hyatt, because I thought Jalen Hyatt was a phenomenal talent when the Giants got him a couple of years ago coming out of the University of Tennessee. Just had Daniel Jones couldn't get him the football. I saw Jalen Hyatt run routes multiple times where he was wide open and Daniel Jones simply did not get the football to him, at least right now with Russell Wilson. And I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler, have a comeback player of the year season, all of that jive. No, you have a professional quarterback in the room, which is something for the first time in a long time that the Giants have not been able to say. And if you go out there and get a rookie quarterback, a tight end can always be a quarterback's best friend. So, nonetheless, we've got about 3 weeks or so to go for the NFL draft. 3 weeks and change. The onus is going to be on these Giants to go out there and make this happen. They still got to deal with the New York media. They still got to deal with the fans. They don't have to deal with it like they had to once upon a time because now the National Football League has turned their NFL draft into a traveling circus. The point that I am trying to make is that once upon a time, the draft was held at Madison Square Garden. The draft was held at Radio City. Previous to that, the draft was held at the Sheridan in Manhattan. So it was the haven for fans of both the Jets and Giants, okay, to express their disgust with the team's first round pick. And more often than not, it was discussed, especially when it comes to the New York Jets. But nonetheless, you're still going to have to deal with it if you're the Giants. So you got to go out there and you have to hit a home run. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you are consistently picking in the top five or the top 10 of the draft, You're doing it for a reason. You're doing it because you're not a good football team. And with that said, when you are consistently picking that early on in the draft, you cannot afford to miss on your first round picks. You miss on a first round pick, especially picks 1 through 10, it sets your team back about 5 years. Why? Because you have taken that guy that high because you pegged him to be a starter, you pegged him to be an anchor, you pegged him to go out there and be an impact player for your team. We have seen the Giants, for the most part, since they last won the Super Bowl in 2011, miss on these first round guys. That has to stop. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They've got to find a way to get in front of this. And of course, like I said, if Joe Shane and Brian Daboll do not do it this year, somebody else is going to be handling this draft room for the Giants next year. It's not just going to be about round one. It's also going to be what they do on Friday night and Saturday afternoon in Green Bay this year. They've got to go out there and get a home run. Maybe they're not a playoff team next year, okay? But they cannot sit up there and say, "Hey, we're 3-14, or we're 4-13, and we're 5-12, and everything is a-okay, and we're heading in the right direction." The fans don't want to hear that. Okay, they were already flying planes over MetLife Stadium last season asking John Mara to fix this mess. The New York media is going to once again have a field day with this if the Giants don't get this right, because unfortunately for them, they've become a laughing stock. They have become the Giants organization that was the late 1960s and the early to mid 1970s, and they have to find a way to get in front of this thing. So you're asking, why did they move the draft? Well, the NFL moved the draft because the NFL, of course, is going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to making money. And of course, once upon a time, this was just a meeting of executives, in around the National Football League. And I think it, correlated with the fact that the league's offices are in New York City, and everybody was able to go to the Sheridan and get it done. And once they started opening it up to the fans, I think late 70s, early 80s, it began to grow new life. And now the NFL is like, well, hey, all these team owners are like, hey, let's bring it to our city and let's make it happen. And it's going to be tough to bring it back to New York. I think at some point it will, but it's not going to be an every year thing, because we see what the draft is now. And of course, we've got people, you know, dressing up like they're going to the game, in costumes, uh, you know, for whatever, like Raider fans. I know they're like, especially on the old days in the black hole out in Oakland, they were known for the jersey, the spikes, the face paint. We've seen so many different outfits for people, the rock concerts, the fan fest, all of that stuff. It's all entertainment. And of course, like I said, the NFL, they're one of those companies where there's profit to be made with everything. Okay. Whether it's great games on Christmas, games in Australia, which they're talking about, Antarctica, the South Pole, who knows? So, nonetheless, they're going to take it wherever they know that they can get some money. But again, I'm with you. The draft in New York City was totally iconic. You're saying, who wants to be in Green Bay? Well, the Packer fans will probably appreciate that. Um, you're going to hear it about the Lions and the Vikings and the Bears when they make their picks there, and probably the Philadelphia Eagles at this point, because I've talked about this in other aspects, but everybody seems to be hell bent on banning the tush push because their teams are not good enough at stopping it or executing it. That's just my opinion. So it's going to be very interesting to see, how the Eagles or the Eagle fans rather are welcomed in Green Bay, especially since the Packers last season started their season with a loss against the Eagles, and they ended it with a loss in Philadelphia as well. You're saying they need to move the Giants back to NYC. We need that raw energy back. I take it you're in the Big Apple right now. Imagine if they played in the Bronx. Well, of course, once upon a time, the Giants and Yankees did share Yankee Stadium, and then after the renovation of Yankee Stadium, once upon a time, I think it was 1975. and 76, I think the Giants, Jets, Mets, and Yankees all played at Shea Stadium. But nonetheless, the beginning of the end for the Giants' time in the Bronx was the fact that they weren't getting any money from the concessions or the parking for their home games at Yankee Stadium. The Yankees got all of that money and they wanted a new stadium. And New Jersey told the late Wellington Mara they basically gave him all of the land over there at the Meadowlands and said, "Hey, do with it whatever you want." And of course, the rest is history. It's still accessible to get to Giant Stadium for a lot of people from Manhattan, whether it's by public transportation or driving. So, if you talk to people about the Giants, coming back to New York City, they've been over there for so long now. It's kind of like they're basically entrenched in Jersey. The Giants have basically been in Jersey now for almost 50 years, believe it or not. You're saying the Meadowlands seems dead. Listen, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the name. Meadowlands. There's really not a lot over there except for the Jersey Turnpike, but the Giants definitely make it happen. And the Giants have to get back. I can't even say get back because MetLife Stadium has never really been a home for them because it's been always so dank, always so unlifeless. Because the Giants have not been winning. There's always been more people, almost the same amount of people there, cheering for the opposing team. And at the end of the day, the Giants have not given their fan base a lot to cheer for. So that again, that's the thing. This is why they have to hit on this draft, and it starts with round number one on Thursday night. They've got to go out there and make it happen. You're saying you're sorry for this tangent, but do you like the Yankee bats? I haven't seen if you made a video on that. The torpedo bats. I think the torpedo bats at some point are going to go the way that the tush push is potentially going to go in the National Football League because you got too many people talking about it in a negative fashion. That's just my 2 cents on it, and I want to see how it plays out for this baseball season. But of course, that's another topic uh, for another day. But David talks, like I said, definitely appreciate you chiming in. We could definitely talk some Broncos and the NFL draft. We could definitely talk some Broncos, for their off season. We could definitely talk some Broncos um, for the 2025 season. Definitely hit me up. Definitely, we could definitely talk about that. And I look forward to potentially doing some stuff with you on there. The kid, as always, I appreciate you chiming in. Definitely appreciate the support. Yes, I am on Twitter, and I'm going to put my handle in the box right now, so you can go ahead and follow me on there. I'm also on Instagram at 300 pounds of sports knowledge as well. So definitely check me out on both of those platforms. And for everybody else, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Definitely appreciate the support. And like you see it right there in the handle in the chat box rather at 300 pounds of sports. You can check me out right there on the X, formerly known as Twitter. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. So David, as soon as I'm off of here and I get on Twitter, definitely expect that follow back. Same thing for Instagram as well. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can check us out at the Sports Depot 365. Like I always say, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. The night of the draft, the night of round one, I definitely intend to be live on Instagram as the Giants are making their picks. So anybody who's checking this out, please feel free to check me out on IG on the night of round one of this NFL draft. David, pleasure. Let please, we can't let this be the last time. The kid, my man, always appreciate the support. You got the Yankee logo in the background, switching gears. I'm sure you do not mind the success that the Yankees have been having with the torpedo bat so far. I will say this: I don't know the score uh, as of right now. I know they're playing the Diamondbacks. I know they lost to the Diamondbacks last night. So let's see if the Bronx Bombers can get back on track. But the NFL draft is right around the corner. There's plenty to be seen. There's plenty to be heard, and it's going to be some very interesting takes. And getting back to the Giants quarterback situation real quick, to quote former NFL GM Bill Polian, it always takes just one team to do something very stupid to change the whole tenor of the draft, especially in round number one, with somebody who you don't think would take a Shedeur Sanders or take a Jaxson Dart early. Would that happen? Possibly. And I guarantee you, if it does, it's going to change the tenor of this draft because teams out there who are going to need a quarterback are going to push the panic button. It's a guarantee. It always happens. But once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.